You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 98. It's my fault my ex left. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. Today we are talking about it's my fault my ex left the relationship. We have all been there, right? Your partner says not to do something, but you do it. Or if you're a classic Dorothy, you show up in a way that you're not proud of because you were reacting to an overwhelming or urgent emotion, right? And then all of a sudden, your relationship's done. So I had a brave heart tell me that her ex told her not to call her because he was busy. She called and then he broke up with her. So she believed it's her fault that they broke up and she can't stop thinking about, what if I wouldn't have called? Maybe we would still be together. And I want to talk about this because I know she's not the only one who is struggling with something like this. So here's the problem. When we choose to believe it was my fault, I want you to think about how you feel when you're believing that, when you're telling yourself that. How do you feel when you're saying, if I wouldn't have called, he wouldn't have left. We'd still be together. If I wouldn't have done that specific thing, he wouldn't have left and we would still be together. How does that feel? Right? We feel mad. We feel angry at ourselves. And when we feel angry with ourselves, think about how you show up. Think about how you treat yourself. You're a complete dickhead. You're an asshole to yourself. You're mean. You talk negatively towards yourself and about yourself. You tell yourself you've ruined everything, right? You agree with what your ex said. Yes, I shouldn't have done that. You beat yourself up, maybe physically, but for sure you do it mentally. You ruminate about how you did it all wrong and how you should have showed up differently. You start playing out different scenarios that could have happened. And here's what's happening. When you're busy doing all of that, do you want to know what you aren't doing? You are not showing up as your best self in the present moment. You're doing more of what you didn't want to do in the first place, right? Remember, your thoughts create how you feel. Those feelings fuel your action. So the first thing I want to mention is saying to yourself, it was my fault, and if I would have shown up differently, we would still be together. Those sentences are optional for you to believe. This is literally an optional sentence to focus on. And I don't care if you burned down his house, if you acted like a fool, you do not have to believe that something is your fault if it is making you show up that way and making you feel that way. Sometimes you can take responsibility in a way where you feel calm and content about it. You're like, yep, could have done that differently. I oftentimes tell my clients who are disagreeing with someone, I had a client who disagreed with her mom a lot, or her mom had a lot of opinions about how she was living her life. And we got in this habit of saying, you know what, Mom, you're totally right. That totally could happen. But that's not what I'm choosing. So you can take, responsibility in a way that serves you. But this kind of responsibility where you're telling yourself it's your fault and you feel angry with yourself, it's not helping. And it's an optional thought for you to believe, right? It doesn't matter what you did. Right? If you cheated and you were a complete terrible person, believing it was your fault is not actually getting you closer to showing up differently when you're angry with yourself or mad at yourself. Think about the problem your brain is trying to solve when it tells you it was your fault. Right? Our brain is just a problem-solving machine. It wants to solve problems. It thinks by telling you that it was your fault and you could have done it differently from a mean place is going to get you to do the things differently now. It wants you to show up differently. It wants you to create a different outcome. But by shitting all over yourself, it literally results in the complete opposite of what you're wanting to do, right? You want a different outcome. And honestly, let's say though, for the sake of argument, that yes, your action made that person leave the relationship. Do you want to be with someone who leaves because of an action you took? I don't. If a guy can't handle me showing up at my worst, he doesn't deserve me at my best, period. Right? Even with this specific example, do you want to be with someone who leaves the relationship because you called when he was busy? Heck to the no. That would not be my person. Boy, bye. Now, people take action because of their feelings, and their feelings are being fueled by their thoughts, right? Last week, I told you about my exes. Matthew, my most recent ex, saw me act a total fool. When we first started dating, I would get all kinds of wound up about him taking photos of other girls because he was a photographer. And a lot of guys would think she's crazy when I acted that way, which would make them feel scared and then maybe lead them to the action of leaving. But his thought process was different. He thought she's hurting, which made him feel compassion and led him to actions of being there for me and talking through it with me. Same circumstance, different thoughts, feelings, and actions. So think about this from a perspective of like employees. Like if you were a boss of someone or in charge of a project, or maybe you're like a teacher or you had a project at school, let's say you give instructions to 10 people. Some of them feel defeated by the instructions you gave them. Some of them feel confused. Some of them feel inspired and excited. Some of them feel determined and committed. Same assignment, same instructions, different thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's not that the boss didn't do a good job with the instructions. It has more to do with the employee than it does the instructions. The way the employee handles the instructions says more about that person than it does about the person who put together the instructions. Same thing with this podcast. The words that come out of my mouth, the words that you hear, are the exact same for all of you. Some of you feel confused by my words. Some of you say it's changed your life. It's amazing. Some of the humans hate it. All the same circumstance, all the same words, different thoughts, feelings, and actions, right? It says more about each of you individually than it does about me and the words that I'm sharing. So the way your partner or your ex handled your actions says more about them than it does you. It shows you their capacity to love. It shows you their capacity to have loving thoughts about someone. It shows you their capacity to have patience and compassion. And honestly, at the end of the day, I want my partner to have a high capacity to love, a high capacity to have patience and compassion, because I am a fucking human being. And I can promise all of my brave hearts here listening, and I can promise my partner that I will fuck up and that I will make mistakes. And I want a soft landing space from my romantic partner in that way, especially when I mess up. And that's how I want to show up for all of you brave hearts, and that's how I want to show up for my partner. Now, my new partner, Jake, got a message from one of his exes a couple weeks ago, and the first thing he did was let me know. He was like, hey, just want to let you know, I got this message. And I was like so honored and excited that he felt safe enough to come to me and just like show me the message. And I was also very excited to show up in a totally different way than I have in past relationships and be that soft landing spot for him, right? I wanted to hear all about his feelings and all about his thoughts. And I wanted him to feel comfortable and safe to share all of that with me and not think it was a bad thing if he even did have thoughts and feelings about this message. None of it was bad. Like, can you imagine a relationship like that, Bravehearts? That's what we're here doing. That is what we're here creating. So here's the thing. When it comes to this whole idea about it's my fault my ex left, I want you to recognize that you showed up exactly as you were supposed to in that moment. Your partner's action of leaving the relationship says more about him than it does about you. It has nothing to do with you. And if you didn't like how you showed up in that moment, being mad and angry with yourself will not get you closer to changing that part of you. You will first have to accept that part of yourself before you can change it. So I want you to start with believing I showed up exactly as I was supposed to in that moment. And then I want you to allow yourself to feel and experience compassion for yourself. Because when you feel compassion towards yourself and you hold that for yourself, you'll be showing up by being kind to yourself, by taking care of yourself, by speaking kindly to yourself. And you're going to spend more time thinking about how you want to show up now and in the future and practicing and working on doing that than ruminating about your past. But it's all going to start with self-acceptance, my brave hearts. You showed up exactly as you were supposed to in that moment. I want you to believe it. I want you to feel it. And I want you to be it. All right, my brave hearts, that is what I have for you this week. I am sending you all of the love, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.